Okay, so I see we have our first 2 o'clock panel that is coming up, and these are all people that I have spoken to. Actually, have had the privilege of meeting Medea twice in person. It's a little bit like it's a little giddy for me. Like it's a little starstruck. I have to admit, which So for anybody who does not know, our next panel is going to be Medea Benjamin, John Kiriakou, and Kevin Gostola. So Medea Benjamin is the co-founder of the women-led peace group Code Pink and the co-founder of the human rights group Global Exchange. She is arguably one of the strongest figures on the anti-war left and has done on-the-ground activism for more than 40 years. John Kiriakou is a former CIA officer, former senior investigator for the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, and he was responsible for blowing the whistle on torture in our military program. And he actually had to pay a very heavy price for being speaking out against that. And so he is also a huge hero. And Kevin Gastola is a journalist and managing editor of Shadowproof. He is known for his work on whistleblowers, WikiLeaks, national security, and civil liberties. And he is also hosts the show Unauthorized Disclosure with Rania Khalek, who's coming on later. So let me bring everybody on. Was that good, Katie?
Great.
Okay, let's bring everybody on. All right, because I'm working it here. Excellent. Hi, all.
Hey.
Hi.
Hello. Good to be with you.
Oh, I'm so glad you guys are here. This is so good. Arguably, this is the panel where we're going to talk about treatment of whistleblowers. I mean, that's going to be like the key focus of this. And I know that, Katie, what happened to you, Medea?
Don't reveal the fourth wall.
Okay.
She's adjusting her thing, so I shut it off until she was.
Okay. See, all right. I forget that you have control of this too, and I'm like, what's happening here? Okay. Then you.
She's back.
All right. So then you just do it. And I know that Katie, who is infinitely more experienced at moderating panels, has come up with some seriously good stuff like to do here.
Okay. Yeah. Well, welcome to all of you. I've had you all on my shows, either Useful Idiots or the Katie Halper Show. So really excited to have you join in this discussion. And it's true, you all are heroes. Medea for being this tireless, incredibly brave and prolific protester and organizer.
She still is, by the way. She still is, by the way. I actually bumped into Medea in Miami at a caravan for Cuban solidarity and like the hands off Cuba, hands off Venezuela. I saw her at a car caravan recently.
Yeah, on my bicycle, Jen.
Oh, you did it on bike?
Yeah,
of course you
every
did.
time.
So badass.
Yeah. I hope you're wearing a helmet.
No,
that would be bad.
We need you. You're being selfish. We need you in the movement. You cannot.
We're not going very fast.
Please. Yeah. Well, anyway, next time, helmet, please. And then Kevin, speaking of tireless, totally, one of the most consistently vocal journalists to cover Assange. And you really, it's a kind of a sad state of affairs that you are so unique in that role. You should be one of countless people who are covering this story consistently. And of course, John Kiriakou, real hero, and the only person to go to jail, to be incarcerated over the CIA torture program. So again, you should not be unique, just like Kevin should not be unique, but you shouldn't be in there at all. You shouldn't be one of many, but there should be many people who were actually punished for torture, but you were punished for revealing said torture. So I guess I think we could start out by talking about let's start with you, John, if that's okay.
Sure.
How you see yourself and how you see Assange and what both of your cases reveal about the treatment of whistleblowers.
Oh, sure.
And also, could you set up your story in case people don't know about it?
Certainly. And before the hour's over, remind me to say something about the effect of calls to members of Congress. I spent years on Capitol Hill, and they really do have an effect.
Oh, well, we can all do that. I'm not even kidding. We can do that now. Whenever you want to do that.
Listen, I worked on both the House side and the Senate side. The Senate's a little tougher, but in the House, sometimes they jump to with just one phone call or one letter. They're very responsive to constituents on the House side. So by all means, email, call, do whatever is easiest for you, because they'll respond and react to it. On the Senate side, they have usually interns or young staff members who just collate all the calls and the emails coming in. So if there is a number of communications coming in on an issue, that will make its way to the senator. So this is not a waste of time. This actually works. I would encourage everybody to call their members. Okay.
Yeah, we have both numbers. Numbers. The only difference is there was something different. John, if you can remind me, there was something different about the thing with the representatives that obviously you have to know who it is. And but we have all the numbers. We have everything there.
And you can call 202-224-3121, which is the Capitol Hill operator. And if you don't know your member, the operator is trained to identify who that is and refer your call to the right office.
Can you say that number again? I'm just going to put it
Sure.
in.
Wait, it's on our phone script. You see it on our script, Katie. It's at the top of the script.
Yeah,
It
but
is.
I just want to put it in the chat so it's
Oh,
always
okay.
there.
Okay.
So 202.
You bet. It's 202-224-3121.
Great. Okay,
Yep.
now we have it there. Okay.
Excellent. So my name is John Kiriakou. I'm a former CIA officer. And to make a very long story very short, I blew the whistle on the CIA's torture program in 2007. I was prosecuted by the Obama administration in 2012 and facing 45 years in prison. I ended up taking a deal that sent me to a federal prison for 23 months, where I had the fabulous support of Code Pink, and my friend Kevin Gastola came to visit me a number of times. Julian Assange has always been a beacon of transparency. And honestly, I can't think of very many things that are more important than transparency in government. One of the things that I like to repeat almost as a mantra, because people just don't get it for some reason, is that Julian Assange is a journalist. And even more than a journalist, he's a publisher. And what I don't understand is why the mainstream media is not lining up behind him, because it's clear to the rest of us that if Julian is extradited to the United States and he's prosecuted, every one of these national security journalists at the Washington Post and the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal, et cetera, they're next. And then who's going to go to bat for them? So this is
Not me.
Not me. Not if they don't go to bat for Julian.
No, seriously. I'm gonna snitch on them. I'm gonna
their home
address is out. I'm just kidding.
This has been going on for so long, for so many years, that everybody who needs to form an opinion and come down on one side of the issue or the other has had the time and the opportunity to do that. So the fight's not over. Of course, the judge, while taking swipe after swipe at Julian in her decision, came down on the right side of it by declining to extradite. Kevin's an expert on this issue.
Yeah.
And, you know, there's precedent in the UK, both in the UK and in the European Court of Human Rights, to not extradite prisoners to the United States because of the way that solitary confinement is used as a punishment here. People lose their minds in solitary confinement in the United States. You know, it was newsworthy yesterday when the state of New York announced that they would abide by United Nations recommendations in not keeping people in solitary for more than 15 consecutive days. Well, that's great, but we're the only industrialized country that doesn't abide by that. Exactly. Right? We've had people, and Medea and I have talked about this in other venues. We've had people in the United States in solitary confinement with literally no human contact for as long as 44 years. Now, can you imagine not seeing or speaking with another human being for 44 years? And then eventually you're released from prison and you're expected to live a normal life and be a law-abiding citizen? It's outrageous. But anyway, the issue here is Julian, and I feel like we're close, but we're not quite there yet. And that's why we need to keep up the pressure, especially on our elected officials and the Justice Department, as you're doing today, to make this thing go away. It's amazing to me that here in Washington, where people are supposed to be so smart, right? We're all the smartest people in America here in Washington, that they don't realize that this is a Pandora's box. And once that lid is opened and everything comes out, you can't put it back in. This is, if Julian is extradited to the United States, this is going to change the way the Constitution is interpreted forever.
Yeah.
Forever. It's a direct assault on our First Amendment rights. And so we're a little bit ahead of things now for the first time in many, many years. We have to finish it off and win it.
Yeah. And do you have any advice from your personal story about what gets people interested or how people can be made aware of what's happening or realize that this is an important story?
Thanks for that question, Katie. I do. I feel like when you're able to personalize things, people sit up and take notice. You know, sometimes a story is so outrageous that people can't help but to be interested. They can't help but to then offer their support. I feel like this is one of those cases. Because, you know, over the course of the last, 12 years, from the beginning of the Obama administration, the definition of espionage has changed. In my view, it's changed dramatically. It's been simplified, which is very, very dangerous. The courts now, the federal courts in the United States, they define espionage as providing national defense information to any person not entitled to receive it. Period. Now, if you look at the Espionage Act, it goes for, 30 pages. But that's the definition that's used in court. Well, that could be, you could arrest 1,000 people every day for laying in bed before you go to sleep and mentioning to your wife something that you did at work that day. Well, guess what? That's national defense information. So if a president doesn't like what's been reported in the Washington Post or in the New York Times, with a precedent of Julian Assange having been arrested and prosecuted, then again, what's to keep those reporters from being prosecuted? And as soon as those reporters are prosecuted, that ends constitutional protections for the rest of us. So I think that we need to personalize this. We need to explain to people in plain English why it's so important and why this isn't a fight that's sort of off in the distance between a transparency group and the American government. This is a fight that impacts every single one of us. That's my guess. Number one, is personalizing it. Number two, and I'll say it again, especially on the House side, those members of Congress jump when their constituents write letters, because most people don't write letters, or in today's situation, emails. But most people don't take the 5 minutes to write and express an opinion. So when they get an email or 10 or 100 on an issue, they react to it. I can't tell you how many times we would get a letter saying, please co-sponsor HR 12345, just because I'm asking you to. And we would read it and say, well, what the heck is HR 12345? Okay, yeah, well, if this constituent wants it, sure, we'll co-sponsor that. And we'd co-sponsor it. Now, on the Senate side, when I was working for John Kerry in the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, one call is not going to make a difference, but 10 or 20 calls are going to make a difference. At the very least, it's going to push the issue onto his agenda. And so imagine what 100 calls could do, or 500 calls. I mean, that's real activism right there.
Yeah.
So let me just say that I just want to say that for anybody who it doesn't necessarily feel comfortable leaving a message, we have a longer form of our script that is also available that you could use the script as an email as well. So if people do feel comfortable sending an email, but they don't really feel comfortable calling, please feel free to copy and paste.
Yeah. Great. Great. And Medea, I wanted to ask you about your experience organizing and what you think can make a difference about in trying to get people to pay attention to this story. If you have any advice, besides obviously the phone calls and the emails that we're all going to do. And in fact, either during this segment or during a break, we should do them, Jen. And if any of you want to do them to show what it's like, you can do them right.
We don't need to put people on the spot just yet.
I'm not putting them on the spot. I'm saying not now. If anyone wants to do them, just let us know in the chat or whatever, and we'll give you the chance to do that, but no pressure. I'm not asking Medea to do that now. But Medea, what I will ask you to do, if you don't mind, is share your organizing experience and any ideas you have for how to make sure that people do care about this and do demand that justice be served, basically, for Julian.
Well, thank you for doing this, because this is one of the great ways to get people to care about the issue and learn about the issue. And it's great to be on with Kevin and John. My connection to Julian Assange is really through the information that he exposed. And as an activist, and I think in terms of getting people to get active in this, there were hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of activists who protested against the Iraq War. They should recognize that it was thanks to Julian Assange that we learned so much about the horrific effect of that war. When I first saw the collateral murder video, I remember we played it. We even had it on screens that we'd go around to the homes of people in power and project it. The files of not only Iraq, but Afghanistan taught us so much about what our government was doing. The Guantanamo files. I mean, now there's still a group that's been active all these years to try to close Guantanamo. They should also be part of this effort to free Julian. I think among the issues for which Julian has gotten a bad rap, it's ones among the liberal community. And as you know, it was the release of the information about Hillary Clinton and the DNC files and John Podesta's files right before the election that really got him the hatred from a lot of Democrats. I think we have to explain to people that Julian's job and the job of a good journalist is just to expose things, the truth, no matter what side is going to be hurt by it. Let's remember he also exposed information about Sarah Palin. He not only pissed off governments that were around Iraq and Afghanistan, but also around the Arab world in general, the corruption of the Arab world that really helped to spark the Arab Spring. He exposed the scandals within the Turkish government. He exposed scandals in Peru. He exposed the issues in Iceland that led to a lot of shakeup within the government there. Extrajudicial killing by the police in Kenya. When you are somebody and an organization that exposes all of these things, you're going to make a lot of enemies along the way. And that's what happened to Julian Assange. And so I think it's important in terms of the low-hanging fruit of people who should care about this is to get people, even within the social justice movement, to recognize that exposing the truth is something that helps us, even if it exposes things about a group that we might be sympathetic towards or a government we might be sympathetic towards. And I think that in terms of the kinds of things we have to do, I've been involved around Julian in a lot of the protests that have been going on in England. And it's really great to see how they have branched out and brought people in from the government, like Jeremy Corbyn. They've brought people in from the world of the artists and the writers. And they've really reached out into a lot of different sectors of society. And I know we've done that for a certain extent here. There are people in the Hollywood scene like Oliver Stone that have come out very strongly in favor of Julian. But I think there's more we could do in terms of getting influencers to speak out. And then I agree with John, it's COVID time, so it's harder to get out on the streets and do the kind of protests we need to do, which is why it's even more important during these times to do the calling and the emailing and the online kind of activists, the tweeting and the Instagrams and the TikToks and everything we can do in the social media to get people to know and care about this issue. So I just want to, say thank you for the kind of educational work you're doing with this almost day-long webinar. And well, it's not a webinar, is it? What do you call it, Katie?
I'm calling it it's a live stream telethon.
Live stream telethon. And I love that there's an action component to it. And I will certainly do it during this time. And I encourage everybody who's listening to not only absorb new information that you can help spread the word to other sectors that might not know enough about Julian and might just have heard Rachel Maddow or somebody else that you might like as a broadcast journalist trashing him. But you also have to put the focus on our elected officials. And I just wonder, I don't know, who of our elected officials, is there anybody in Congress who's already come out openly in favor of releasing Julian?
I have not seen anybody.
No.
The closest I've seen is Nina, currently running. She actually just put out something supportive of Julian Assange. And I actually would have probably told her not to do that. But she did a few days ago. Yeah. And that's the closest I've seen. I haven't seen anybody sitting in Congress that has spoken out in favor of Julian Assange.
And why would you have told her not to do it?
That's Nina Turner, for people that know.
I would say once she's in, she should let it all fly. But I think right now the goal is just to get her in there. And she's got a very short little span here between now and election day. So just like sort of from a political perspective, that's actually why when I messaged her about this, I was very clear. Like, I don't think this would be a good move for her. I think that not yet. So that would just be, just caution.
Yeah, I see what you mean. But people who are already in Congress, we should definitely be pushing them, not only in what we write to them, but also really trying to get them to be public, to put out some information, some statements, a tweet or something. Because if you compare all of the people in the British Parliament and the Labour Party, for example, there are lots of them who have come out publicly. And to compare that to the U.S., where it's our government trying to extradite him and charging with so many different charges that it could be 175 years in prison. I mean, we should certainly be getting people, and not just Democrats, libertarians, certainly people like Rand Paul. We should be pushing them to come out.
And I was we were jokingly but trying to get Trump to own the libs before he got out of power by pardoning Assange. What else? We were wanting him to. What is the ask for you, John? I'm sorry. The legal.
Yeah, it's pardon. There's a little bit of a story
pardon
there
you,
too.
Even though you're
We had asked for Assange, Snowden, and me. And, I hired a lobbyist and I had some reach into the White House. Tucker Carlson sort of adopted my cause. And I really believed I was going to get it. I actually believed for a little while that all three of us were going to get it. And then what I heard from a well-placed person at the White House is that it was Mitch McConnell that called over and said, if you pardon these three, you're going to lose the impeachment trial. And so none of us got it.
Wow.
Oh, that Mitch McConnell, always there with such a helping hand.
That he didn't
such a helper.
He gives a terrible name and does terrible PR for turtles, by the way. So I just want to say that not all turtles. And one other thing I would just want to point out is that if publishing this information were so treacherous, then we really need to be going after the New York Times, the Guardian, everyone who reported on these stories. Because, you have to be consistent. And either it was not cautious, not prudent to cover these things, which I would, of course, disagree with. But if that is the argument for why Assange is such a disreputable person, such a pariah, then fine, but also go after the places that publish this. And it's also incredibly infuriating that, much like John, you were the only person to go to jail over CIA torture. We have
not torturers, just the person who exposes the torture. That's because that's logical.
No, right. That's what I'm saying. He was the only right. No, but he didn't do it. But I'm saying from the revelations about the torture, the only person who was punished was the one who revealed it, not the ones who engaged in it. And likewise, Manning and Assange helped bring to light the collateral murder video, which again, no one is talking about. The fact that there was captured on video the really brutal killing of civilians, of members of the press, of the people who tried to help the people after. I mean, literally, you have this on video. They're trying to help the people who were shot, and they decide to shoot those people too. And they're narrating it in a way as if it's a video game. And no one got in trouble for that, except for the people who helped expose that. Kevin, wanted to ask you about what it's been like covering these stories and why you think there's such a deafening silence around it.
Well, yeah. So I think that first, let me say thank you to Medea and John. It's great to be able to be part of this panel, and thank you for organizing this telethon event. It's extremely crucial what we're doing here. And just in general, before I get to your question, I wanted to throw out my own opinion about the distinction between Donald Trump and Barack Obama. I get a lot of pushback from people who seem to think that it's the same. There's not really any difference. And in fact, they'll point to the grand jury investigation and they'll say that was opened against Julian Assange. So Donald Trump charging Julian Assange is not that much different because they were investigating Julian Assange, and because there was this cloud of investigation that ultimately drove him to seek asylum from the Ecuador government. And I just would say that we have to be very specific about the timeline of events and what actually happened. We can point to charges being entered against Julian Assange by the Trump Justice Department. We can't find an identical example under Barack Obama. There simply aren't charges on the record from the Obama administration that were brought against Julian Assange. And so like that right there is enough in my head to say that there's a difference. And the other thing is, as activists, we have to be sensible and recognize that this difference is something we can leverage to get the outcome we want for Julian Assange. The fact that it's Barack Obama who chose not to prosecute Assange is something that you can mention repeatedly until you finally get the result that is necessary, which is dropping the charges, because that's somebody who's part of our team. Well, not my team necessarily, but like the team of people that care. Like this, the fact that, if Barack Obama was the person who started the investigation against Assange, I would tell you that this struggle would be astronomically more difficult, and we might not even have a chance. And so that being said, my experience covering this and with journalists is just that for the most part, people who are in the media do feel what you talk about, Katie, and what Matt Taibbi talks about, that ick factor. They really do feel that if they touch this, they are going to be in trouble, that it's going to jeopardize their ability. I feel like they think they're going to get blowback from their audience. There's just so much propaganda out there about Julian Assange. I would wager that almost 90% of what we think we know about Julian Assange is mostly propaganda. At least what people think. I mean, I'm a reporter, so hopefully what I am putting out there isn't propaganda. Hopefully what I'm reporting is something that I can substantiate and share with people based on things that are true and from sources and people who are advocates who truly are good for Julian Assange and WikiLeaks, and they're not there to demonize him. But I think most of what we know, what we think we know, whether it involves the Podesta files or whether it involves the Swedish case, which I know is such third rail that we just avoid it. But honestly, I think it's to the detriment of all of us that we treat it as such a third rail, because there are some incredible due process issues with what the Swedish prosecution authority did that we make our job even more hard when we ignore it and pretend like it didn't exist. That being said, I think what we need to do here is exactly what John was saying, is to personalize this, to boil this down to those things that make it really easy for people to tap into and care about this story and to stand up for it. This is a father. He has 2 children. He has a partner. He is being kept in a prison in indefinite detention, and he's being treated in an extraordinary way, especially considering that what he did, even if you believe in decarceration and restorative justice, he has not been accused of any violent crime whatsoever, and yet he's being held in Belmarsh prison during a pandemic where we know there have been outbreaks in the facility. He was spied on by UC Global, a private security company that targeted journalists on behalf of, we believe, the CIA. It's a massive scandal that only Spanish media seems to really care about, because there's a Spanish case that has been filed in Spain against...
And it's a Spanish company.
Because it's a Spanish company against, and primarily the director, David Morales, is the one who's in trouble for that. Right. But this is something that, if you talk about the treatment and the way they went after Julian Assange, you should be able to get people to see that this was about destroying a family. This was about finding out who the identity was of babies who were being brought into the embassy. This is about identifying who was the lover of Julian Assange so they could go after. So this is classic for people who have followed the history of activists and organizing in the United States. We know that this is how the national security state works to demonize people. So it's very classic in the way that this contractor went about targeting Julian Assange. Finally, I would just say that this is a bit of a nitpick, but I think it's interesting for our conversation. Most of the time, when you hear journalists in the media talk about this case, they will call Julian Assange the source, or they will call Julian Assange a whistleblower, or they will say he's the leaker. And it's very deliberate what they're doing there. But I also want to say that it's impossible for him to be the leaker, because he's not working in any of these agencies. He doesn't have access to this information. He's not the one who has chosen to disclose this information to the public. He's the publisher. He's the journalist. He's the person who is taking the risk with his organization to do the work necessary to have the security, to authenticate the documents, to make sure they're not forgeries. And WikiLeaks has a pretty, I think, 99.99% record of being able to verify the authenticity of all the documents that they've ever filed on their website. There's maybe only a handful of documents you can question, and they didn't make any news headlines, so they don't really matter. And that's his job. And so I think it's up to us to do this work. This telethon is important because we're destigmatizing Julian Assange. We're demystifying all of this. Our politicians, the elites, have made him out to be this boogeyman figure. And then with our work, which can be difficult, we are going to tear all of that apart so that people can see the essence of what Julian Assange did and what WikiLeaks does and appreciate it again. Because they did before the elites got to it. And then now the next generation of people only know Julian Assange based on how elites teach them about Julian Assange and WikiLeaks. It is up to us to unravel that.
Can you actually, since you brought this up and you said that we avoid the Swedish case to our detriment, can you give a quick overview of what that is?
I find people still harp on that. I find that he still gets referred to as in some sort of sexual predatory way, even though that was a complete fabrication. And that has lingered. And I think that they knew that would linger. And I think that that's one of those things that keeps the sort of liberals sort of anti-Julian Assange.
Yeah, or it's an excuse for them too. But Kevin, can you shed some light on that?
Yeah, and I have a very Me Too safe answer for how this, this is what we should say. This is the way it was. They started and stopped the investigation into Julian Assange no less than 3 times. No less than 3 times did the Swedish prosecution authority open and close, open and close, and open and close the investigation. And there technically weren't ever any charges issued against Julian Assange. There were allegations that they were investigating. They were told not to go to the Ecuador embassy. The prosecutors were told that they couldn't go to the Ecuador embassy and question Assange in the embassy under the treaty or agreements that Sweden has with the UK, because the British government actually applied pressure to prevent the Swedish prosecutors from coming to the UK to have that. They wouldn't allow for. So then there was some conversation over whether they could do this virtually with Julian Assange in the embassy. We know a lot of these details thanks to journalist Stefania Marizzi, who I know you talked to for Useful Idiots. And she's, I just want to give her quick credit on this show. She's one of the only journalists I know who has had the guts to push Freedom of Information Act requests against all the governments implicated in this entire scandal of this case against Julian Assange. But finally, I would just say that if you care about the women that and whatever went on in the bedroom, that night with Julian Assange, if you care about that, if you care about valuing their experiences and believe that, again, like, let's just pretend like I don't know anything about who these women are, and I know that there's been some claims about whether one of them's compromised by the U.S. government or not. Let's just pretend like, let's set that aside. Let's pretend like these are just women who had a bad experience with Julian Assange. If you want to value them, then what the Swedish prosecution authority did is the absolute wrong way to take care of people who are bringing sexual allegations, because you're allowing a case to be politicized and manipulated by world governments for the purpose of keeping a publisher in limbo who has been exposing corruption by a powerful government. And so I think that it's pretty simple. It's pretty simple. If you want to talk about this, you raise the due process issues and you connect the due process violations to the due process violations that are existent right now in the extradition case and some of the other inequities that are existent in this case that has been brought against Julian Assange.
Yeah. And does anyone want it? I mean, I guess I can do a phone call.
Do you want me to, I have it set up better. I already did my call, so I don't need to. People should see somebody do it. Well, have you called your person? Have you called the Department of Justice? Because they've heard from me a couple of times.
All right. Where's the script? I'll do it.
Hold on. I'm putting it up. I'm going to put it up.
All right.
Hold on. I got to figure out.
We just want to make sure people, want to encourage people to. Also, by the way, sorry, one more thing. The story about the spying is incredible. Absolutely incredible. And the fact that it hasn't been covered. I mean, I brought up the fact that it was covered by, Spanish El País because more understandably, it's about a Spanish company, but they spied on Assange and they even tried to go through the guard. They did. They took out his son's diapers to try to do a DNA test. At that point, they didn't know they were his children. And they are so stupid, by the way, that they think there's DNA, that you can do DNA from stool, but that's another issue. But they did that. This is the level. And it was such a disgusting invasion that's what brought some of the people working for the Spanish company to tell correct me if I'm wrong, Kevin, but I think it's, she said this to us on Useful Idiots, his partner Stella Morris, that they actually came over, they told her not to bring the kids anymore because they were doing that. You know, they were taking the samples from their nappies, I guess, as they say in different countries, their diapers. And that is just a really repulsive thing. And what's really scary about this is that despite the fact that this was revealed, none of the mainstream reporters, right? The woman, Ellen.
Ellen Nakashima.
From the Washington Post.
Her cell phone battery was taken. They tried to take her cell phone battery from her, and we get no objection. The Washington Post won't put out any press release standing up for their reporter. Yeah, it's absolutely repulsive. I mean, it's disgusting. If Medea, you want to make this on speakerphone so everyone can hear it?
Yes, I'm leaving my message now.
Okay.
Hello, my name is Medea Benjamin, and I'm calling from Washington, D.C. to ask that the United States drop the case against Julian Assange. I am very concerned about the ramifications that persecuting a journalist for exposing American war crimes will have on our civil liberties. Joe Biden said that he would end Trump's attacks on the press, yet his administration has indicated it's going to continue to seek Assange's extradition. The prosecution of Assange creates a dangerous precedent that will prevent journalists from holding our government accountable. Please protect our First Amendment rights and drop this case against Assange immediately. Thank you for your time. Bye-bye.
Right.
So I would just say
keep going. Sorry.
that we should tell people which button to press when they contact the comment line. Did you?
Okay.
Yeah, I mean,
it was the one. It was the one. If you want to make a comment on civil liberties or constitutional issues, I mean, you get two options in the beginning where they basically say this is an emergency, call the FBI, and then there's if you want to make a comment on issues regarding civil or constitutional rights. I think it's push 1, John.
Yeah, so you can do 1, or you can do the general comment line, which would be 9. So either one of them.
That was great. Thank you for doing that. And I got to give a shout out to John Holder, our producer, who, option 1, who has really done an amazing job and put this together. And and so everybody, it is down in the description. Feel free to use it. Feel free to use it and convert it as an email.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Great script, John.
Yeah. And I got to get the house.gov. That's how I find my Congress people, house.gov.
Yeah. And we are hearing from people that a lot of, shockingly, Dianne Feinstein's mailbox is full. And so was, Mitch McConnell. Yeah. So obviously there's going to be certain people that you're just not going to be able to get through to, and apparently Joe Biden. But I would just say, honestly, I think it's most important that we hound the Department of Justice at this point, now that Merrick Garland is in there. So I think really that's sort of the key one right now.
Yeah. Agreed.
And we should do some kind of protest or rally at the Department of Justice. Is there something planned?
Well, there was something that there have been things going on this past week. I don't know if Kevin, if you know anything about that. They had some stuff going on in DC this past week regarding Assange. A lot of the activists were doing something on the street out there. I think that somebody even put something about that.
I'm just loosely familiar that there was a St. Patrick's Day timed event, Clovers for Assange, and
that's what it was.
And usually they would pick the target would be to go to the Justice Department. Yeah,
but I agree. I mean, the more the merrier.
And is it the AssangeDefense.org or other groups? Yeah.
That did the one, it was the Clovers was what it was that did this. It was, I put up that, I got lost in the comments. It was Clovers for Assange, I believe.
As far as I know, that wasn't Assange Defense Committee protest. It was another more loose, more grassroots, loosely knit group. But yeah, the Assange Defense Committee has organized rallies, and I do agree with Medea that there definitely should be something.
Yeah, well, the Nathan who we had on in the very beginning, his information and his organization, that stuff is available in our description, and that's the organization that is pretty much on top of all things that are actions involving Julian Assange, which is how we ended up getting their assistance with this. So I would suggest that people go there. and check it out because they keep everything current, whatever actions are going on for Julian Assange.
And I would also just say, in case people don't know who their rep is, you can go to house.gov house.gov/representative/find. You know what? It's a little hard to, just type. You can just type in there because and that way you'll actually get to see who your representative is, and then you go to the other thing, the house.gov/representatives, and it's listed by either name or by state. But this is a way that you get it by your zip code. Excellent. So yeah, I can do that. Maybe one of us can do it per segment.
Yeah. I mean, I think I think that's good.
I got to call Chuck, even though the Senate, I just want to call Chuck Schumer anyway. I like to check in on him.
You like to talk? You like to chat with Chuck?
Yeah. Yeah. Ask him about that high school, who his favorite classmate is from that high school that he went to. Bernie went to, RBG, Norman Finkelstein. Anyway, but I digress. Yeah, I mean, it really is, again, it's a total stain. Can you imagine that they want the script back? Can someone bring back the script?
All right. I got it. All right, Mallory. All right.
And also, thank you, Mallory. And also, can you just imagine, again, that you were a Washington Post reporter who had your cell phone meddled with, and you decide it's not worth raising your voice? Why do you guys think that is, by the way?
I know the answer to that question. Because if they say something, then people are going to accuse them of being Assange supporters. So, like, you're actually supposed to want to be the victim in this case. Like, you're supposed to want to be targeted on behalf of the CIA. Did John or Medea disagree?
No, I don't disagree at all. I hate to say.
You're supposed to want to martyr yourself. You're supposed to martyr yourself for this military-industrial complex.
Right.
Well, and look at the way intelligence reporting has changed over the years too, where once upon a time reporters tried to develop sources like you do, Kevin, to give them information or confirm information on intelligence issues. Now we have the likes of Ken Delanian at NBC and MSNBC who got caught sending his articles to the CIA for clearance before he sent them to his own editor.
I mean, it's more efficient, right? It's more efficient. Sorry,
cut out the middleman.
Exactly. Yeah.
Cut out the middleman.
You don't want to cost your editor to do that extra work. It's good. Nice. It's very considerate. Yeah.
I have a question for Kevin. Well, and you, Jen. Well, anybody might know. It does seem that some of these organizations for the protection of journalists have come around and been supporting Julian. Is that the case?
Yeah, I can't think of a single press freedom organization that has not come out in support of Julian Assange. Now, the problem I have with the Committee to Protect Journalists, which I wrote about, was at the end of the year, I want to say in 2019. So this would have been the same year that Julian Assange was arrested. And mind you, we're coming up, just to be clear, we are coming up on the 2-year anniversary of him being tossed from the embassy. But the Committee to Protect Journalists refused to list him as a jailed journalist in their end of year index of people around the world who are to be there. And then they knew that they were going to get a backlash. So incredibly, and this is why I wrote about it, was they put up a blog post on their website explaining why they could not classify Julian Assange as a journalist. But just to be clear,
ridiculous.
No matter how you view him, he's paying dues to the International Federation of Journalists. He's actually a union member of a journalist organization, which in my book, no matter what you think of a person, that makes you a journalist automatically. So there shouldn't be anything more. But that being said, he's not even a U.S. citizen. So our metrics for how we recognize who does and does not have First Amendment rights, it's sort of like we need to have a global sense about all of this. And the global sense is that everyone is entitled to this freedom of expression, should have these protected rights. And all of these organizations have recognized that. I would say, if we want to look upward rather than punching downward, the people at Reporters Without Borders and Rebecca Vincent have been truly remarkable in their advocacy for Julian Assange. She's used her platform in the UK to call attention to some really important issues on the ground in the United Kingdom, as well as with the Julian Assange case.
And my other question is, have we seen any kind of divisions within the, the big papers like Washington Post and the New York Times? I remember seeing the very negative ones about Julian, but have there been positive ones as well?
Yeah, I don't think there's been a whole lot of reporting on the Assange case beyond the immediate reporting on the arrest. And, so what's really sad to me is when I was logged in during the pandemic, and mind you, if you had just had some kind of awareness, whether we're talking about the New York Times all the way down to The Intercept, all you had to do was send in a request to the courts, and you could get a media credential to cover this. They would give you a login. Because of the pandemic, I feel like we should have had greater access and did have greater access to the extradition trial. And there's really no excuse for any journalist or media organization to not be covered, because you didn't have to spend resources and money to travel to London from the United States in order to cover the extradition trial. But there really were mostly European journalists, some people from other parts of the world, and a highly limited number of US journalists that were in there following the extradition trial, me being one of the only ones waking up every morning at 3 a.m. to follow the extradition trial from the United States. And I think they did the bare minimum. Most of these media organizations have done the bare minimum, and they need to come back to it now. But somehow I feel the election of Joe Biden makes it harder for them to write about this case.
Yeah, of course, because
I think that you're talking about people with significant amounts of corporate donors, and those donors and their advertisers are not wanting anybody to speak out on behalf of Julian Assange. They're just not. They're just too. They are too corporate owned, and they just do not want this out there. And I also think that the mainstream media is very threatened by people like Julian Assange, and their numbers are increasingly going further and further down. And they don't want independent media and people like Julian Assange exposing things. They're not doing it themselves, mind you, but they don't want anybody else to do it either.
Yeah, I mean, it's really, again, I can't get over how shameful it is that this is not front page news. I mean, remember when no one was covering, barely anyone was covering the ruling. The treatment of this has just been so incredibly biased. It's mostly been just ignoring the case. And I do think, again, like you were saying, Kevin, people who like Obama, you need to be pushing the Obama approach to this, not the Trump one. And for people who like Trump, there was something I was going to say. Oh, for people who are Republicans, John, the only person who advocated for you getting your pension, am I correct? There was one senator who advocated for that, and that was John McCain, right?
John McCain. Yes.
So for you Republicans out there, got to follow that lead. Yeah. So I got the liberals covered. I got the McCain Republicans. And if you like Trump, okay, he did at one point. Well, yeah, if you like Trump, just know that Assange is hated by Hillary Clinton. And there's nothing that Hillary Clinton would dislike more than to see him freed. So for everyone out there who doesn't like Hillary Clinton, you definitely want Assange to be freed. But if you like Hillary Clinton, like Obama, you definitely want him to be freed so that Trump and Pompeo are not the one calling the shots. So everyone's covered.
Katie, the ideological spectrum is not a straight line from left to right. It's a circle, and it meets at some point. That's why in the past year, I was on the Tucker Carlson show 9 times.
Right.
He has a lot of wacky extremist ideas.
But on
the issue of whistleblowing and the issue of Julian Assange and Ed Snowden, he is right on. And so this really is something that the left and the right can cooperate on. We both want freedom of expression, freedom of press, transparency, governmental accountability. There's no reason that we can't all cooperate on this.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And I would just add the broader demand,
Right.
in addition to Julian Assange, has to be that we end these Espionage Act prosecutions against people that we saw under, the Trump administration, and that we really saw escalate and pick up under Barack Obama. And then also in this same vein, we have a huge issue with people being stopped at the border, the U.S. border with Canada or Mexico, or just coming into airports. We have a huge issue with journalists having their devices seized, and people who are especially connected to the kind of independent or alternative journalism, and that impacts upon WikiLeaks and this other stuff. So there is a agenda for freedom of the press that having these charges dropped against Assange fits within, and that's important.
Right. And everyone who believes in that, I don't care what I may not like what you have to say, but I'll fight to the death to protect your right to say it. All of those principles, there's really nothing controversial about this. It should be very straightforward. It's freedom of press, and everyone should be afraid of and disturbed by the possibility of Julian being kept in prison. And also, this is not, his health is not great, and he's being exposed to COVID. And this really, if this happened in another country, the United States would be condemning this as a crime against humanity, as an example of like a corrupt country.
We would use it as an excuse to. We would use it as an excuse to send people. We'd be sending troops in to help those poor people.
Yeah. So, any closing remarks from people on the panel? And thank you so much again for doing this.
No, I just had another a thought or question about trying to push Eric Holder to say something.
Ooh.
Tweeting at him.
That's interesting.
Oh, that's a cool idea.
He knew. I mean, he definitely had the wherewithal to know that this was not a good where to go forward. Like, he knew that this was not good for all of us. So, that's a good idea.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, another idea is getting these people who were in the Justice Department who have left, and we know that there were a couple during Trump's presidency who defected and did not want to be a part of this prosecution. It was reported in I think the Washington Post actually reported it, that there was division over whether to bring charges against Julian Assange. And so identifying those people, getting them to speak. Matthew Miller is someone whose name came up multiple times during the trial, the extradition trial, and he's the person who was on record for saying why the Obama administration couldn't charge Julian Assange. So getting him to speak might be something that could have some kind of influence over Joe Biden. That's a person we don't know, but Joe Biden certainly knows. And Merrick Garland and the Justice Department, the top high-ranking officials there, are certainly going to pay attention.
And he was Eric Holder's chief spokesman. So maybe he could even get us to Holder.
That would be cool. John, you want to reach out? And not you, John. John, who's my producer, who's in the comments.
Because Matthew Miller hates my guts.
Yeah, John's the person.
Not you, John. John, my producer, who's listening. He's the person who sends out our information. If you want to reach out to Matthew Miller, that would be really cool, and see what we can come up with.
Oh, well, thank you guys so much. And anything you want to make sure people know about that you're working on, or?
Yes, please plug your stuff.
No, this is about Julian. I'm happy to do this. Thanks for inviting me. And I look forward to doing it again soon.
Well,
thank you guys so much.
I'll selfishly take you up on the offer and just quickly say,
please.
You guys are doing the work, so that's
it's okay.
Well, so I run a newsletter on whistleblower stories, covering whistleblower stories, called The Dissenter. It's at dissenter.substack.com, free, available. And this is where you can get all the latest updates on WikiLeaks and other whistleblower stories. Thank you.
Okay. Wonderful. We'll include that in the description. Can we add things? We can add things in the description, right? Yeah. On the tech challenge. Okay. We'll make sure to add everybody's stuff in our description.
And we have a weekly gathering that John was recently on called Code Pink Congress, where we talk about issues and then we take the time out, like we're doing today, to actually call and send emails. And that's at the website codepink.org, Code Pink Congress. And we should do a whole event. We get a couple hundred people on each week. So we should do one on Julian and have everybody do what we're doing today. So thanks for the idea.
Yeah, absolutely. Anything. And truthfully, Medea, since you're local basically to me, anytime you call, I'll come. So whatever it is.
Local?
Wonderful.
Are you in different states?
No, she's down here. Medea's in Miami.
I'm in DC right now. I'm back and forth, but I'll be there with you, Jen, on the next caravan on March 28th.
Oh, that's why I know why you're there, Medea. It's to harass your victim, who you ran against.
Debbie.
Wasserman Schultz,
Debbie, right. I also like to harass Marco Rubio. I know where he lives.
Yes. Right. But Rubio did not accuse you of something that you clearly didn't do.
Assault.
That's another story. Yeah.
For anybody who's ever seen Medea in person and then to think that somebody could accuse her of like physical assault.
Yeah.
It's really crazy.
Incredibly violent 6 foot plus woman. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for having us on.
Thank you guys.
Yes, thank you guys so much. Really appreciate this. Thank you.
Bye. Thanks for watching. If you want to support our mission to transform politics into service, please like this video, subscribe, follow us on social media, and consider joining our Patreon, where you'll get early access to our interviews as well as other exclusive content. Links are in the description. Peace out.